Hi, and welcome to Business Unusual. I'm Liz Whitehead, co-mastermind at Diversity Masterminds, and I'm here with Heather Cox.
Hi, I'm the other co-mastermind of Diversity Masterminds.
And we're going to talk about when business unusual becomes business as usual. And we're going to talk to our guest today, Rhonda Kallman. Hi, Rhonda.
Hi, nice to be here, you guys.
Oh, we're so glad you can make it. And we're going to get into business unusual, but before we do that, tell us a little bit about your business.
Well, I am here at, can they see this?
Yes.
Or is it just all audio?
Awesome.
Oh, okay, well, here we go. I am here at the lovely, beautiful Boston Harbor Distillery, where we make Boston's premier whiskey and other spirits. So we've been here now for 9 years and have been distilling for 6 of those 9 years. We're having a nor'easter today, so it's a little darker than normal, but it's actually very good whiskey drinking weather. I'm sipping on our Putnam New England rye whiskey that's been finished on a Cab Franc barrel from the winery next door. I know,
That's
Heather,
cool.
I got to get you some of this.
I know.
Yep, Boston Winery is right next door. So anyway, all of our products have a truly unique Boston accent, if you know what I mean.
That's great. So how did you get into this? How did you start your distillery?
Well, some would call it luck. I call it a lifelong passion. I've always been in love with alcohol, frankly. Mostly because the complexity of it and the flavors and the ingredients and bringing things together. Of course, the conviviality of the alcohol consumption and how it makes you feel. But I just loved everything about it, particularly whiskey. When I was a young girl, wasn't a woman yet. My father used to drink rye and ginger, and he'd fall asleep and I would drink some of his drink. And I loved it. And I absolutely just loved it. But then I ended up in my early 20s, I ended up in the beer business. A guy by the name of Jim Cook had an idea to start a brewery in Boston, which is the Boston Beer Company, makers of Sam Adams and other delectables. And he asked me to help him start a beer company. So it was just like, so I spent 15 years helping him make Sam Adams and other brands a household name. And I ended up here at Boston Harbor Distillery, my first love, to make whiskey in Boston. And I feel like I've been training for this role my whole life. So here I am.
Well, I had the distinct pleasure of hearing you tell your whole story it was either the craft beer, I think it was, when you talked about, you had like some other trial and errors between the Sam Adams and the Boston Harbor Distillery, right? And the Putnam whiskey. So, and I love your Buzz with the Buzz story. So.
You mean my moonshot beer?
Yes.
The only thing since Prohibition to be banned by the federal government. Like, really? You can't make this stuff up.
I know.
And unfortunately, for me, that happened. I started a company called New Century Brewing Company in January of 2000. It was like really the first brewing company of the new millennium. And I called it New Century Brewing Company, and I made innovative American beer styles. And one of them was a beer with caffeine in it. And so that's what Heather's referring to. And it was this wonderful, delicious Pilsner beer with trace amounts of natural caffeine, which is odorless and tasteless. It was actually only 69 milligrams of caffeine. And it was a beer, I called it Moonshot, which is the year the astronauts landed on the moon. And we were just starting to really make something happen in that Four Loko and Panther juice, just wrote up all the alcohol and caffeine, and it was just a speedball in a can, got us all shut down. But when life hands you lemons, in this case, I make whiskey, because I shut down my beer company when that happened and got to focus on what really is my true love, and that's making whiskey in my beloved city of Boston. So here I am.
So I want to ask you a quick question, because as you know, I've given this your whiskey out as gifts on more than one occasion.
You're awesome.
And people ask me all the time, well, is whiskey a man's drink? So what do you say when people say things like that?
Oh my gosh, no. I once heard somebody else say this, so I won't take credit, but it's like, we don't taste with our junk,
Right.
But I love whiskey. We make whole grain whiskey here. We don't make bourbon right now. Bourbon by law has to be made with a majority of corn,
Right.
which is just sweeter, lighter. When I liken everything to the beer business, because that's my background, and Bud, Miller, Coors, Corona, Heineken, they're all corn-based beers. And people love
That's
those
interesting.
beers, and they drink a lot of them. But then there's the craft beer, and craft is really an ingredient story with bigger, richer flavors and real crafts people behind it, passionate people. So what was the question now? I forgot what you asked
So when
me,
people
but
say it's a man's drink.
yeah, right. And it's real. And then people walk through here, walk into the doors here, and they don't know anything about whiskey. And they're like, oh, how should I shoot it? Like, you should drink it the way that you enjoy it. But I love the flavors. Like I was saying when I started, whiskey doesn't have to be, it's for any person that really loves good, rich flavors. And you have to have good whiskey.
Yes.
Men will drink crappy whiskey, probably.
Yeah,
just
women
to
will
get-
not.
Women are, yeah, right. Our body is our temple.
Yeah. Well, I'm not drinking bourbon. First of all, it's not worth the calories. Okay. If it's not going to be delicious, I'm not drinking things that are that many calories if it's not going to be good for me. Right.
Well, do you know that like an ounce of whiskey is only 65 calories?
If I only drank an ounce, Rhonda, that would be fine. But when was the last time I only drank 1 ounce?
I know. Well, if you drink 4, it's still not that much.
It's true.
And it's so delicious. So delicious.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, okay, 4 ounces of whiskey. It's basically a health.
basically health food at this point.
Yeah.
Right. And if you happen to have it on the rocks, it actually is less calories because it will get diluted.
Diluted with water, right?
And then, and then you're drinking your water intake for the day too.
For sure.
So to
You're
me, it's
hydrating at the same
very
time.
efficient drink.
I can see why you wanted to put the caffeine and the alcohol also very
Right?
efficient.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, it was so good. But now we're making a coffee liqueur and espresso martini.
I'll be bothered after you.
Oh my gosh, isn't that? Oh, you have to shake that up, shake it over ice. You're gonna love it. And
I keep
then
it
it's-
because I like to show people, but I'm afraid like if I start
You know,
drinking it, it's gonna be like it'll end up like this bottle is the first.
oh yeah, that's
empty.
like that has more caffeine and more alcohol than my little beer did, but that's legal
That's
because
funny.
it tastes like coffee. It's crazy.
Right.
Well, someday we'll change the laws of the government.
Women
in
will
our
take
spare
over
time.
finally.
We'll do
Okay,
that.
so one of the questions we ask all the time, though, is people, you've been through ups and downs. Like, is this the first crisis? Was COVID the first crisis that your business went through? Now, it may be the first crisis that this business went through, but it sounds like you've been through kind of some ups and downs in business. And like, how did those previous crises or difficulties, hurdles, whatever words you want to use, prepare you for this one?
Well, that's a good question, and this was a doozy for sure, the pandemic.
Yeah.
And at one point I was on the phone with a bankruptcy attorney. You just had to figure out we don't know what was going to happen. It was really a dark day.
Right.
Given that I have been at this for numerous decades, and life just throws you some curveballs. So I've been through a lot. I kept reminding myself I've been in a lot worse places. And so that was how I got through it. But
So it's more like a mentality for you then.
yeah, and it's believing in yourself and your abilities. And what the hardest day was having to really lay off all my employees, except for my distiller, because luckily when the shutdown happened, we had just been making malt whiskey, and so we have our heads you cut the heads off when you're making whiskey, heads, hearts, and tails, and the heads we actually use to clean our bar and wash our windows and stuff. So we have heads, and that's what you make hand sanitizer from. So that happened right at the same moment. And
Wow.
we had like government agencies, nursing homes, all kinds of people calling us so panicked. It was really very scary. And of course we made it, we gave it all out for free. So he and I were here like every day, almost 7 days a week. And it got us to the point where we could, just if the phones weren't ringing and everything was shut down. And so we could really imagine about how can we transform the business and grow. And as a result, the fact that that was only a year ago is pretty mind numbing, virtually, right? So the Espresso Martini came out of those dark days, the barrel aged old fashioned. We made a gin, Lolly's Gin, that's amazing. So, that's what we did during the pandemic. We just did what
you played with your booze, and you felt so. Like, what did you like? What did you not like? So, is your gin? Is it like a high juniper? Like, is it a strong juniper flavor? Is it less of a juniper flavor? Because that's what I find like most people don't like about gin, right? Is that strong juniper in it?
I haven't sent you.
I haven't tried it. I know. The problem is, and here's what we have to fix. This is the biggest problem: is you cannot ship to Vegas yet, right? So we got to figure out a way to sell it in Vegas or sell it in California, because that is the places I go to easily, and I want to be able to just pick it up in the store.
No, you can now, because if you go to our website, shop.bostonharbor, there are 2 licensed individuals that can ship to you.
Excellent. Okay.
So the gin for us, gin by law has to be made with juniper. There's all these laws.
I know.
Laws, rules,
so funny, right?
rules.
Such a regulated industry.
Yeah. Meanwhile, marijuana can be delivered to your door here in Massachusetts.
Totally. You're also in Vegas.
Yeah. Right. Crazy. Right. How did that happen? We had all these predetermined issues. I couldn't put caffeine in my beer like crazy. Anyway, the gin is citrus forward. It's literally, I know we're making gin when my distiller walks through the door and he has 2 bags of oranges. Like, we literally put whole oranges, lemon and tangerine peel, ginger roots in there, coriander, with a little bit of juniper. Awesome stuff.
Nice.
We'll take care of that. We'll figure out how to get you.
Yeah, we're gonna try that.
Right.
That's so fun.
So that's really interesting, because I mean, it's not always like the story of, okay, I thought the worst thing was gonna happen, and now like I thrived through the pandemic. But it sounds like it did provide you that space and time to think, to transform the business. Where do you see that going forward? Are you going to continue to make all these things? Have you sold more to people that are at home? How does that work?
Yes, to all of the above. I just think that, like the pre-batch cocktails, the Espresso Martini that Heather just showed, and my Putnam barrel-aged old fashioned, for example. I mean, people were at home, like there were no restaurants, and Massachusetts very stringent. We did not have cocktails to go at that point, but we do now, which is interesting. So I was making this pre-batch, like really trying to solve a problem, and which was great. But as soon as I got it ready, the restaurants were allowed to sell cocktails to go. But that's fine, because our stuff is just all natural. It's wonderful. And it's been great for us. I mean, it's the perfect thing to have at a party. You bring it to a house party, or you're having people, I love to entertain. You got to do everything, the menus, and you're cooking and you're cleaning and you got the kids running around. And meanwhile, people need a cocktail.
100%.
So
yes.
This is just like, oh my gosh, the old fashioned is the first thing to go, because you just pour it over ice. And if you slip in an orange or a cherry, you're doing a lot. You don't even need it. It's so good. This Espresso Martini, you can't make them at home. I've tried. My distillers know how to make it better than I do. So anyway, it's all, you have to, it's a terrible time for the world. There's just so much carnage, and people are struggling, and it's so much negativity, and it's a bad place, man. I wish it never happened. I can only speak for myself. I was fortunate enough to be able to come to this beautiful building, pre-Civil War era. Every day there was no traffic. It's right in Boston. There was no traffic. It was, there really were no rules in a lot of ways. So it was kind of fun just being able to create with just being able to create. And I look back fondly about that part of it, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I can't wait for the winter to be over so I can come to Boston.
It has hasn't
not
even
coming in the
freaking
winter.
started yet, Heather.
It's already gonna be too cold for me. I can almost guarantee you. If there's even a smell of snow in the air.
Oh, I'll get you a cashmere sweater. You'll look beautiful.
Oh, hey. She's getting gin and cashmere.
I know, right? It's getting better every time, every minute. Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so, but yeah, you know, when you're in this business is not easy.
Right.
And, you know, there's different facets of the business. It's, you know, getting legal and producing it, getting your ingredients and your raw materials and your, you know, there's a supply chain shortage everywhere.
I was going to ask you getting supply chain issues. Yeah.
You know, all of that. And then, you know, that's been my business. I've worked in bars, you know, years ago, but now I have a front of the house that is a cocktail lounge and it's a tour center. But, you know, we have the consumers coming in. So we're all walking around with masks all the time. We're only open on Saturdays to the public because we just can't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
We want to give it the best experience that we possibly can and, you know, make sure everybody's safe. But it's a whole new component worrying about the front of the house. And so you got to make it, and, you know, and then you've got to make it legal and finance it. And then you got to go to market with it and go through distributors and channels to get to retailers. You got to get a distributor and a retailer and then hope that somebody will buy it off the shelf. You know, it's when people aren't even going out in the stores. So,
yeah.
So you just learn a lot and you just get scrappier. That's all I say. Right?
That's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I
But you're scrappy anyways by nature. You have that like hustle in you. You know what I mean? That's why you've been able. And you know what? I've heard you say this before, and someone asked me what I mean by that, and because I said it like I knew what I was talking about when I said it. But when you said you had to get out of beer and go into beer's big sister, which is whiskey, right?
Yeah.
So what does that mean? People keep asking me, and then I was like, oh man, they're gonna make me back up what I know. I don't know how to answer it.
Well, it's really the mature version of beer because whiskey starts off as the same process as beer. And I could probably take you through my tour, but you know, it's the same vessel. It's a mash tun. You put grain in the mash tun and you add boiling hot water and you get this thing called wort. It's the same way that beer starts. And the difference in where it kind of diverges is that we don't put hops. You know, the hops are the nearest botanical relative to marijuana. They're a flower, they're a spice.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they give beer their bitterness and their aroma. There's no THC in it. Oh, well. Anyway,
that's the next one. That's the next one.
Well, the federal government will not allow that
I
right
know,
now.
it's true, it's
I
true,
tried. I did try a little bit. I tried with CBD, which is non-THC.
Yeah.
And this was like 3 years ago. They shut it down.
Oh, you're ahead of your time.
Oh, well, what else is new? That's my biggest problem. It's expensive to being out front, you know, it's expensive. Yeah. But it's the same process as beer, the fermenters and just, but beer is really, what is it? It's grain, water, and yeast. And that's what whiskey is. Grain, water, yeast, and wood. You know, the barrels.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the mature version of beer. As you said earlier, people, isn't that a man's drink? Because men used to only drink beer. A lot of women didn't drink beer.
But now we see a lot of women in the craft brewery industry as well, right? In the craft beer industry.
And they're brewers. I mean, yeah, we've got, you know,
a few brewmasters, a few female brewmasters.
And boy, has that changed because, you know, that's, you know, part of my deal in 1986. I got a recognition award from the Brewers Association for being the pioneering woman in the beer business, because there just weren't other women unless they were married into it or they were born into it. And I wasn't any of those things, but too bad. But that's okay. I ended up here and I just, you know, everything about what goes into the art of making really good premium quality whiskey and other spirits is really what gets me out of bed every day.
Nice.
I love it.
Well, it's beautiful. It looks beautiful. I can't wait to see it in person. It looks beautiful behind you.
And I just love all these things. So you're like a scientist,
right?
You have like brewing the whiskey, selling the whiskey, distributing the whiskey, and then you also have this event venue. Like you have a venue that you're running.
CWE should do something there.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody should know. It's great.
Yeah.
Tonight we have, so I was telling Liz that we have a mayoral election coming up on November 6th. And there's 2 contenders and they're both women.
Nice.
And one of the women is having her last fundraiser here tonight. But the other woman had hers here 2 weeks ago.
Very nice. Very nice.
So that was good. So I bet we're going to be exposing people to someplace they've never been in the middle of a nor'easter. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
Whiskey drinking weather.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it really isn't every weather. I'm just saying, I feel like every weather is just whiskey drinking weather.
I know. See, now you know why we get along so well.
All right. Well, we're gonna let you go prepare for the mayoral
event. Yeah.
But before we do that, tell people. So, if somebody wants to get everybody whiskey or espresso martini or gin on their list for gifts this season, how do they get in touch with you? How do they find you?
BostonHarborDistillery.com.
Great.
And so you can go right there and it will get sent off to the legal people that can actually send it to you.
And we'll put all the links in the show notes and everyone will be able to find you, and we'll add your Instagram handle so people can follow you. Yeah. And you guys, seriously, it is that demon seed. It will give you a little kick in the pants too. You need to try that. Even if you never thought you liked whiskey before, this is the place to start because it is delicious. Delicious.
It does. It transforms any cocktail.
It's true.
Or bring the heat to any party. Anyway. Heather Cox, I can't wait to see you again. I don't know when that will be, but I hope it's soon.
We're going to make it happen.
And Liz, it was so great to meet you.
You guys are not far from each other. You just drive on down, up. I'm not even sure what direction that is, Liz. But.
And it's only 8 hours.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was like. It's like someone in Oregon being like, well, you're close to LA. It's the same.
We'll go together. Liz and I are going to meet up there. We're going to meet up there.
But I'm super interested in the distillery tour. So, and my family's very whiskey. Well, not the kids, but everybody else.
Yeah, it's a great teething mechanism, by the way. A little schnapps on the gums.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
we've been there. We've been there. Well, thank you so much, Rhonda. This has been awesome. And we will see you next time on Business Unusual.
Cheers.
Thank you.